We are now recording. Okay, so this is our 9th class, which puts us a little past the halfway mark. I'm sorry I don't have your midterms yet. I'm really going to try to get them by next week. We finished training and we've now started on appraisal or evaluation or performance management, call it what you will. And this is, to me, probably my favorite of the HR subjects. I like this one the most. I think it's the most interesting. Training is really, really useful. Compensation is pretty important, but I like this idea of appraisal because this really goes to ideas of motivation and feedback, and this is why it's so important. Okay, before we begin, are there any questions of any sort? No?
Will we have to know like all the different types of assessing employees for our final?
Yes.
Okay, all of them, all right.
I don't think that's me. Okay, performance management. So last week, we really just began. We did the Carter Cleaning Company was the only one we did. And we talked about should Jennifer have to appraise the workers and what would be different methods you could use to appraise them. And then I think we actually did, we did discuss the beginning of what is a performance management system, right? And the idea is that a performance management system is used to make sure you're utilizing all of your employees' skills. Another way to say this is getting the highest efficiency, right? Not effectiveness necessarily, but definitely efficiency. So this is a system, right? That's one thing we need to be clear on. This is a system. It's something that, when we say a system, it's something that has an input, a transformation, and an output. That's a system. Now, there are two kinds of systems. There's closed systems and open systems. Can somebody tell me the difference between a closed system and an open system? How about Chloe? Chloe, what's the difference between a closed system and an open system?
I don't know.
Is your body an open system or a closed system? Let's say our bodies.
I would say close.
Are we affected by things outside of our body like the temperature or the weather?
Yeah.
So it's open.
Okay.
A closed system is something that is not in any way affected by what's going on outside.
Okay.
Now, most businesses obviously are open systems, right? They're affected by the economy. They're affected by technology. They're affected by demographics of what workers are available. What else can somebody else tell me things that a business might be affected by? Technology, economy, demographics, anything else? This goes way back to the beginning of the semester. Things that influence OB and influence systems.
It would be like current events.
Sure.
Politics.
What politics would be a huge one. Absolutely. Anything else? I'd say the other two big ones are in the environment, like environmentalism and globalization. Those are the big things that affect businesses. For our bodies, of course, we're affected by all kinds of things outside of us. The weather, the time of day, even emotions. If you're hanging out with a group of people who are all happy or all sad, that can totally affect us. Stress can be outside of you. If your teacher says you have a big assignment due tomorrow, that's outside of you, but it's going to affect you. It might affect your sleep or your digestion or physical pain in your shoulders. These are open systems. Some systems are closed. So for example, the system inside your computer. Now, I guess you could say it's affected by heat or cold, but let's say we have like let's say we have a big computer in a temperature controlled room. That would theoretically be a closed system, just nothing outside is supposed to affect it. A car, I guess the gas you put in, I mean, most systems are open. Most systems are affected by something. But the point I'm trying to make is that a system has something that goes in, a transformation, and something that comes out. So when we're talking about appraisal, what goes in, what's the transformation, what comes out? Now, if I'm appraising you guys, and as a teacher, of course, I do have to appraise you, and I use grades. So what goes into this system? Mikhail, what goes into this system of school?
Of what?
School.
What goes into the system of school?
Yeah, I mean, this class is a system. My grading, my evaluation of you is a system. So when we begin this process of David is going to evaluate the students, what goes in to determine the evaluation?
Grades.
That's, I'd say, what comes out. The end result of my evaluation is you get grades.
Would that be our labor, or our
Definitely. Sure.
Okay.
So your labor is one thing that will go into this. Anything else? Nicola, what's something else that will go into the system?
I mean, our label has, he said, like attendance, our midterm, final term, and also some kind of behavior. I mean, if we do some, you know, not acceptable behavior, it will deduct us grade, you know.
Okay, so let's stick with that. Now we have three things that go in. One is weird. One thing that goes in is your labor. One thing is your attendance. One thing is your behavior. Those are all things that go in, absolutely. Another is me, my determination of what is an A, what is a B, what is a C. You know, before the class starts, I have that in me. You know, so when the class begins, you guys are putting in labor and attendance and behavior and all this stuff. And I'm putting in these ideas of what gives and, you know, a 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. And those are kind of the things that go in. Now, we also do have a classroom or technology, you know, PPTs, the nature of the test. Maybe I'm giving you extremely hard tests. Maybe I'm giving you extremely easy tests. That's going to influence it too. These are all the things that go in. Now, what's the transformation? The transformation part is where you use all of these things. So I, the teacher, give you the tests, and you use your labor and attendance and behavior to take the tests, and I grade them using my evaluation of the grades. All of this gets transformed, and what comes out? Grades. And evaluations of who's the best student and who's the worst and all of the rankings, that comes out. And that's the idea of a system. Something goes in, it gets used, and something comes out. Now, when we talk about a performance management system, what goes into this system? Well, just like teachers and students, we have a boss or a manager and employees. So what do the employees put into this system? Christine.
Sorry,
what goes in terms of the employees being evaluated? Just like you guys as students, you have labor and behavior and attendance. What do employees bring?
What does employees bring? They bring also their labor, their time,
sure,
their hard work, their skills to do that job.
Sure, they bring their time, they bring their skills, they bring their knowledge, they bring their interests. This is what employees bring. If you're a worker, this is what you bring. You bring your time, you bring your being on time, you bring your behavior also. you bring your labor, you bring your KSAOs. And what does the manager bring? The manager brings a conception or opinion of what is excellent work and what is not excellent work. If I'm the manager, I might have a different standard than, Harry is another manager, and Harry's standard might be different than my standard. And that comes in also, our different standards of what is excellent work. Then this gets transformed. We actually give you some sort of evaluation test. So that also comes in. We might have lots of different kinds of evaluation that we'll talk about today. And then we use the test to evaluate you, and what comes out is your rating or ranking or score or whatever it is. And it's the same idea. But what I want you to understand from the very beginning is that this is a system. What's the purpose, Camila? What's the purpose of this system?
I believe it's for the appraiser and the employee to see the whole thing as problem solving and not as something to see their faults.
So the purpose of this system, I agree with this sentence. Obviously, I wrote it. So the purpose is not to find faults. So what's the purpose?
To find the opposite of faults. To find some
I set it up here.
maximum utilization.
What does that mean?
I don't know.
What is utilization?
Like to
Maximum, sorry?
take like the maximum potential of something, probably.
Sure. And the maximum potential of what?
Employee.
Yeah, that's what we want. That's our goal here. Our goal is to maximize what the employees can do. Our goal by doing this performance management system is not to find out faults and see who's doing a bad job. And the reason I'm spending a lot of time on this at the beginning is this is really critical to me, in my opinion of HR, that HR is not about trying to find out what the problems are. And a lot of people enter into appraisals or evaluations saying, I'm going to find out what the problems are. But that's not the goal. The goal is to use our employees to the best of their ability. So we talked last week about how I would know your potential. And this is the same idea of this system, what goes in and how we transform it and what comes out. We talked about how we can evaluate your potential. Do you have potential? And then we finished last class by talking about some of the objectives of a good performance management system. So some of the objectives are, and you see nothing here is about finding problems. There's nothing here about finding problems. We might say that we are looking for areas that need improvement. We could say that, but we would not say we're looking for problems. What we're looking for is, do we have a clear expectation of what your skills are, what you want to do, what you're supposed to do? Do you feel like you're getting clear feedback from the managers? Are we determining your potential? These things are all important. What else is important here? Who just came? Bella Anais. What else is important besides feedback, improvement, expectations? A big one is motivation. That we are trying with evaluations to motivate people. And then finally, to express themselves. What do we mean by express themselves? Do we mean that you should dress however you want to dress? Or that you should put up art around the office? No. What we mean is you should tell the manager how you feel about what's going on. And that's quite important, to be able to have a place where you ask the employees how they feel. And that's where we stopped last week. Any questions before we go on? Okay. How can you be motivated to achieve your potential? Can you think of a time you were motivated? Ethan, you just got here.
Just got here. Yeah. Time I was motivated. I think when I could see kind of the goal and the end result and know that I was going towards a good kind of outcome, but then that also kind of at the same time, I knew I had support behind me and other people who were kind of pushing me and then supporting me no matter what kind of happened.
Okay, that's good. Feeling like you have a goal, feeling supported. Bella, can you tell me a time when you were motivated to achieve your potential?
I'm motivated mostly when I see other people around me, like going for whatever they want or going for achieving their potential. So yeah.
Okay, that's good. Being around a community of like-minded people. Jody, can you tell me a time you were motivated to achieve your potential?
Maybe like if there is time pressure.
Okay, sure. Sure, so what we want to do is, this is what we want from appraisal. We're not trying to find out what people did wrong. We're trying to motivate people to achieve their potential. So this has a lot of benefits. So let's talk first about the benefits for the employer, for the manager. Well, for one, we get a lot of data by finding out what is your potential, are you achieving your potential? And this data can be used in figuring out your compensation. It can be used in identifying training needs. It helps us make decisions about who we should transfer, who we should promote, or maybe even who we should fire. It tells us about your performance, and it tells us about responsibility and who should be doing more work. So from evaluating you, finding out if you're doing a good job or a not good enough job, we get a lot of data. That's really one of the biggest benefits. And we can then use the data to determine, should you be where you are? Should we move you to a new area? Should we promote you? Do you need more training? Anything like that. So in terms of the Carter Cleaning Company, when Jennifer is trying to evaluate the employees, this is what she's looking for. Data about who should get paid what, and training and transfers and all this stuff. How does this help the employee to get evaluated? So if you get evaluated, this gives you a clear understanding of your duties, of the things you need to do at work, and that's very important. It gives you a lot of clarity on how you are performing. That's very important too. And it gives you a chance to express your feelings. And that's very important at work, to be able to tell someone how you feel. People who tend to be less anxious and stressed out have a relationship with their managers where they're able to express how they feel. So there are lots of reasons to appraise people, okay? Again, compensation, promotions, who we're gonna hire, or who we're gonna keep and who we're gonna fire. That's based on appraisal. Training is based on appraisal. Fixing the problems, correcting the deficiencies, career planning, and expressing opinions, okay? So now we've said this a few different times. So obviously I consider this to be something you do need to know. And this is a system. So when I say it's a system, what I mean is this input, transformation, output kind of goes in. Oh, I don't like that. This input, transformation, output, right? Stuff goes in, it gets transformed, it comes out, and then we go back to the beginning. It is a system. It's always going around. It's not a one-way movement. So how do we have an effective system? Well, this idea of appraisal is the first thing that we need to have an effective performance management system. And to do this, the first thing we need is standards. We have to set standards. And I talked about this a lot in the video, this idea of a standard of what is good or bad or acceptable or not acceptable behavior or performance at work. And then when we appraise someone, this is evaluating or comparing their current performance or their past performance relative to performance standards. And this language is very important to me, relative to performance standards. And what I mean by that is compare. That's kind of the word I'm looking for, compare. So, Jonathan, what are the things we're comparing? And when I say we, I mean managers. What are the things that managers are comparing?
Well, peers to themselves.
I mean when the manager is appraising the employee.
Yeah.
What is the manager comparing? Comparing the employees what to what?
Their performance to set standards.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
Their performance to standards. That's what we're talking about. That's kind of the idea that I want when you talk about appraisal. Appraisal is when a manager compares the employee's performance now to a set standard. And then we can train the person if they're not at that standard. We can give them feedback about what needs to be improved or what they're doing well. We can give them incentives to improve. There's lots of things we can do to help the employee achieve this set standard. But what we're doing here is comparing their performance to a set standard. Now, this is not something we do once. This is something we do throughout the year. Probably not every month because it takes too much time, but maybe every 3 months or 6 months, we'll do this process. And the purpose of this process of comparing their performance to a set standard is to align their performance with the organization's goals. What does that mean? What does that mean, Mikhail, to align their performance with the organization's goals?
So that would mean like the employees are doing, it's kind of like strategic management, right? It's when the employees are doing essentially what they're supposed to achieve the goals, the strategic goals.
Sure, it's when the employees are doing what they need to do to achieve the company's goals. So align means to go in the same direction. And we want the employees' goals to go in the same direction as the company's goals. So we have our standards, and then we compare their performance to the standard. And I consider this to be important too. So our performance appraisal is this continuous process. And we've talked now about why already. We've talked about why should we do this? Because it's beneficial for the employer. The employer can use this data in order to find compensation, to give the employee feedback, for training, for promotions, for retaining people, for hiring people, for giving people bonuses. There's lots of reasons the employer would want to know who's doing well and who's not. For the employee, this gives the employee a chance to express themselves. And when we say express themselves, we mean tell the manager what's going on, what's good, what's bad. It gives the employee very valuable feedback on how they're doing at work. And it gives the employee some understanding of what they need to improve. And it gives the employee a real clear understanding of what their responsibilities are. So we have reasons for the company to do this appraisal, and we have reasons why it benefits the employee. Now let's talk a little about the steps. So let's talk about the steps now in performance appraisal. And then last, we'll talk about how do we define this set standard. So the steps. Well, there are 7 things we're going to look at first. Before we actually choose how we evaluate people, there are 7 criteria that are important to us. 1, however I judge you, it has to be job related and it has to be smart. So can you tell me generally, you don't have to know all of it, but generally, what does smart mean, Jody?
Oh, I forgot it. Sorry.
And I don't care if you remember every letter. Tell me generally what it means.
I don't know.
Really? I would think you must have learned this in every class in CIP. They all talk about this. Nicola, what is smart?
It's a plan that you can measure, achievable, timely.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of looking for something more general. You're right. But Christine, can you try? Give me a very general idea. What does smart mean?
It's just a set of like, I don't know, like standards or something that you have to kind of follow, or not follow, but it has to like hit all these things. Like, I don't know what S is, but measurable, achievable,
When
realistic.
you say, I agree with you, but when you say it has to hit these things, what's it?
The performance, or like what are the expectations maybe that you have?
Okay.
The goal.
Yeah, I think goals is a good word. I think performance is okay. I'd probably say behavior. But I think all of these are okay ideas. You could say that smart is a way that we make sure a goal is a good goal. You could say smart is a way that we make sure behavior is something we can measure. Something that, like you said, expectations. Smart is a way we can make sure that expectations are very clear. So I don't care if you remember specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, timely. Again, that's specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, timely. I don't care if you memorize those, but I definitely care that you understand that smart is, because then you can always look it up on Google. It's not like you can't find out. You just have to remember, what is it about? So the first criteria of measuring performance, right? Performance management, measuring performance, is it's got to be job related and smart. Can I give you grades in this class based on how nice your hair is? Well, it's not related to your studies. It's not specific. It's not measurable. It's not realistic. So it would fail this criteria. You need the appraisal method to be related to the job. It's got to be reliable and it's got to be valid. And we learned these words before. Chandra, can you tell me what does reliable mean?
Yeah, reliable is consistency, and valid is measure what you're supposed to be measured.
Good, very clear. It has to be standardized, which means it has to be given the same way the whole time. You can't appraise some people this way and other people that way, or praise some people one-on-one and then appraise other people with a big panel. That's not fair. It's got to be practical. Your appraisal method cannot cost, $1 million. It has to be reasonable and practical and workable. It can't take 8 months to appraise somebody. Could you do a fantastic appraisal in 8 months? Sure, but it's not workable. It has to be acceptable. You can't appraise people in a way that they would not be willing to do. It should support growth. Whatever your method is, it should be something that people don't get upset by. And employees should be willing to accept suggestions. If your employees are absolutely not willing to be appraised, it's not going to go very well. Sorry, I always forget my keyboard covering. Okay. So, in the video, I talk about these a little more, that it has to be job related and smart. It has to be reliable and valid, standardized. It has to be practical. It can't be too complex. It can't take too long. It shouldn't be too expensive. It has to be acceptable to everybody, acceptable to the employees, acceptable to management, acceptable to HR, acceptable to everybody. It has to support employees' growth. And managers should be able to ask themselves, how do the employees view me? Do I have confidence in my ability to encourage the growth? If a manager is not a good coach, then the manager should be allowed to take coaching lessons or get training. Do I have interest in my employees and encourage them? Is the manager interested in this job? If the manager doesn't want to appraise people, it's going to be hard to make it about growth. And this is one of the problems in a lot of companies, is that the managers see this as something that they don't want to do. It's a waste of their time. They don't want to spend their time appraising people. But that's a huge problem, because then you can tell if a manager doesn't want to do it. And then it's not really about employee growth. And appraisal, one of the reasons I like it is so beneficial to employee growth, or can be. Okay, next is to talk about this cycle. So there's 3 steps when you appraise people. And the easy way to say it, step number 1 is set your standards. And we'll talk in a little bit about how we do this. But first you have to set a standard. What is good behavior? What is good performance? What are good sales? What is a good customer satisfaction rating? What is good? If you don't know what is a good teacher, if you don't have a measure of what is a good teacher, how are you supposed to rate us? What's a good student? Tell me, Anais, you there? No?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay. Anais, what's a good student?
Me? I don't know, just someone that pays attention in class, maybe spends a couple extra hours working a little bit harder, trying to get all the concepts. Someone that tries, I think.
Okay. Ethan, welcome back. Ethan.
Yes, Dave.
What's a good student?
Good student. Somebody who is always attending class, who responds to feedback well, helps others. I think communication is key, and not always the best student gets the highest marks. So I don't know if that's always an indicator, but I think more attitude and communication makes a better employee, better student.
Okay, Jonathan, you just heard Anais's definition and you heard Ethan's definition, right?
Yep.
What if you had a student that was very much like the person they described, but the student got a 40 in the class? Would that be a good student?
Well, kind of yes, but then also in a much more real sense, no.
I mean, that person would have failed the class, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's always good if you can see someone try, but if you don't really attain your own goals, I mean,
It's
the
hard.
goal in
It's
the
hard.
class, yeah.
I
The
mean,
goal
how do
in
we
the class
say
is
it's a
to
good
get a
student
grade.
if they
Yeah.
failed?
I mean, that's like that's the first performance metric, is to not fail the class.
Now, Jonathan, what if we had a student who got a 98 in my class, but they didn't respond well to feedback and they often didn't really listen, and they weren't bad. They didn't start fights or anything. They didn't mock me, but they just kind of disregarded it and they did it their own way, but they got a 98. Would you say that's a good student?
I mean, personally, look, this is university, right? You should be able to study how you think you should be, is the best way for you. That's just my opinion. But then
So
again,
you
I
would say
mean,
then that
yeah.
would be a good student, somebody who got a 98 on all the finals.
Yeah.
Okay. Look, there's nothing wrong with this. I'm not, this is just opinion based. The point is not that I think one is good and one is bad. The point is that without a standard, we have a big problem when we're trying to rate people. There are lots of schools where grades are not that important. There are lots of other schools where grades are everything. And if you don't have a standard, then you have a problem where I might rate a student very highly because of their attitude. And you have another teacher whom we have had big problems throughout the years about this for thesis papers. And I think all universities have this. You know, when I first came to CIP, one of the first things I did at around thesis time is I asked everybody to sit down with me and tell me how they grade. What is an 80? What is a 90? If my student tried really, really hard and I saw them develop as a student, but their final paper isn't very good, what does that mean? Because I needed to know. And now, you know, after a semester of doing that, it takes time as a teacher. It really does to understand what people's standards are. But you have to understand the standard of an employee. Is it growth you're looking for? Is it the number of sales you're looking for? We have to set these standards. Then we do what we said before, which is compare. And what are we comparing, Bella?
We are comparing the employees' performance to these standard performances.
Good. So we're comparing their actual performance now to these standards that we set. So whether our standard is a number of things you sold or customer satisfaction, feedback, or whatever it is. And then the third step is we give feedback to the employee and we tell the employee what they did well and what they need to improve. All right, so this is our 3-step performance appraisal cycle. We start with establishing our standards, then we appraise the employee, we compare their performance to the standard, and then finally we give feedback and take corrective action. So we have to decide what we're going to appraise. Before we can do this 3-step process, are we appraising sales? Are we appraising customer satisfaction? What are we appraising? So that's kind of our first preliminary question. Now that we're into not why is this important, but let's actually evaluate the teachers, the students, the employees, the managers. What should we appraise? Well, first of all, we might appraise people based on whether or not they achieved goals. So that could be one thing for students, that we give you a grade based on did you complete projects? That could be the grade. For teachers, it might be in a lot of schools, it's the number of students who pass and how students do on a standardized test. And that can be very problematic because then the teacher has an incentive to just teach the students what's on the test. But at the same time, then the students do well on the test and then the school gets more funding from the government. So sometimes it's based on a goal. Other times it's based on skills. And that's, for example, how I grade. I base it on competencies and skills. I'm not grading you based on memorization. That's a part of it because you need to have the tools ready to apply. But I'm not really grading you based on goals. I am grading you based on skills. Did you learn what I taught you and were you able to apply it? So when you take the final exam in my class, and I think most of you, certainly almost all of you know me and you know how I grade, I'm much less concerned with this introduction. Why is performance management important? Or how does it benefit the employee and the employer? I'm much more concerned with, can you apply these appraisal techniques? We could appraise people based on mutually agreed expectations, what we could call an expectation contract, where you've sat down with the manager, you've talked about what they expect from you and what you expect from the company. If we're going to do this based on goals, then there's a few things we need if we're going to appraise people based on goals. How do we set an effective goal? Generally, there's 3 things I'd like you to know about goal setting. And these are important also because they're used in a lot of motivation, involves goal setting. And one of the appraisal methods is MBO, management by objectives. An objective is another word for goal. So there are three things I want you to know. Number one, the employee's goal should align with the organization's goal. Okay, that's number one thing I want you to know about goals. And that just means that whatever goal you give the employee, it should match the direction of the organization. If CIP wants to be an entrepreneurial school, the goals that we give to teachers should be based on entrepreneurial goals. If CIP wants to be a school where students work internationally, the goals we give students should be based on, did you work internationally? It should match what the organization wants. Number two, the goal should be smart. It should be a SMART goal. This is the number two thing I want you to know about goals. And I don't really care if you remember SMART or if you just remember that this is a way to make a very clear, specific goal. Number three, goals should be participative. So what does this mean to make a goal participative? Who can tell me? There's some new people here. Hey, Constance, when did you get here?
Hello, sir. Sorry for the delay. I fell asleep.
Okay. Constance, can you tell me what is a participative goal? What does it mean to participate?
It's a collective effort.
Okay. Collective, I agree. Collective between who and who?
Could mean all the employees or the...
Not necessarily all of them.
Upper management and employees?
Okay, I would say between the manager and the employee. So if you're an employee and I'm the manager and I am going to judge you based on whether or not you achieved your goals. So let's say you are a salesperson. And so part of the goals, of course, are the number of products you sell. Part of the goals are the customer satisfaction. Part of the goal is, did you keep organized paperwork? You know, we have a few different things. And we have a goal. Now, if I want this to be a goal that you take seriously, it might be better if you and I decide the goal together. As a teacher, Constance, and you're a student in this class, would you rather be graded with numbers or with a goal that you and I agreed together?
A goal.
There's no right answer, but.
A goal, it's more participative.
What kind of goal do you think would be a good way to grade you on this class? Can you think of a goal?
The thing, like, to be able, for example, to give a proper, like, ADDIE process, for example, like you gave us to do for today. Like in a proper
situation. Me.
No, it's for real. Like, move, like some, like, from theory to practical, like,
sure,
to form a goal like that.
Sure. Anybody else? Can you think of an interesting goal? Chloe, what would be a goal you wouldn't mind being graded on in this class?
Something I would use for my future job. So I guess, but more like specific stuff, not just like human resources management, but something more specific.
So maybe a real
like for example, the leading part, or yeah, something like that.
Like actually going into a model company and planning how with their HR. I mean, that's great, you know, and this is what CIP is trying to move towards. You know, CIP is progressive in trying to move towards this kind of stuff. These goals are going to be much more effective if you and the teacher sit down together, whether it's the whole class or individually, and come up with the goal. And goals Thank you. And goals are, this is true in all goals. You know, when you're talking about giving an employee goals, it's much more effective when the manager and the employee work together to decide it. So 3 things I care about for goals. Next is who should do the appraising. You know, you can be judged or rated or evaluated, you know, you can say this however you want, by different people. You could be evaluated by yourself. Rodrigo, you here?
Yes.
Would you like to give yourself a grade for this class?
Yeah, that would be good.
Well, what if the grade, I require only one thing, the grade must be reasonable based on what you've learned. Would you give yourself a high grade?
I'll do like my best to show it.
Yeah, you choose the number.
Oh, yeah.
Would you give yourself 100?
Nah.
95?
No, that's a really high one.
90?
Probably like 85.
I mean, that's, you know, that's exactly the point of like a self-rating. You're talking about a guy who could give himself 100 and wouldn't. And that's one of the benefits of self-rating, is that people don't rate themselves as high as they could. Now, if this was about getting money, people do often rate themselves higher because they do want to get the money. But when this is about something like grades or it's ethical, you know, people are going to be very honest. There's a lot of benefits to asking people to rate themselves. People are quite honest. Peers. Christine, would you like to be rated as a student by all the other students in this class?
Yeah, maybe. But I don't know if they know my full, if they're grading me based on my performance in like in class, and maybe, but like my reports and everything.
No, they're just grading you on what they know. So
Sure.
your performance in class. Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. So peer is a possibility. You could have a committee of people. Camila, would you rather be graded by me or by a committee of 3 different teachers and Eling?
I would rather be graded by a committee.
Why?
I think it's better when more people like evaluate you rather than only one person, because then you get
Maybe.
perspectives and yeah.
Okay. Do you think, no, I don't even need to ask this. A teacher being judged by students is a very good idea. Teachers should always be judged by students, and they should also be judged by the boss. But there's no question that being appraised by somebody below you is very, very helpful. 360 degree is pretty much all of these together. And a crowd appraisal is when you're appraised by a group of people you don't know. And the common example would be like a social media post. If you get 1,000 likes, you are being critically appraised by a group of people you don't know and you've never met. And that's possible, but obviously that's not suitable for most jobs. So peer appraisals by the people who are the same level as you. Rating committees is a group of supervisors. This helps with problems of bias. Self-ratings, and that can be very beneficial. Subordinate appraisal. Subordinates, of course, want to give anonymous feedback. If you were giving me feedback as a teacher, probably you would want to be anonymous. However, I would learn more if I knew who you were, because then I could discuss with you personally why you think this is good or this is bad. So it improves more when managers do know the subordinate, but of course the subordinates are not going to be comfortable usually giving open feedback. 360-degree is probably the best, but the problem is there's so much information. So if I was, as a teacher, getting 360-degree feedback, I'd be getting appraised by you guys, the students, and the other teachers, my peers, and my boss, Yiling, and the deans of Donghua, and even maybe your parents or the Tracy from the coffee shop or anybody would be appraising me. This works best when there's a belief that change is necessary. And the recipient, that would be me, I believe change is necessary. And I have a positive view of the change process. And that's when this information can be most valuable. Okay, now we're ready to actually talk about the different methods. And there are a bunch of them, right? There's 12 different methods that we need to talk about. And as was asked before, I expect you to know all of them. And we'll do an exercise when this is done to make sure. Now, I said in the video, I don't know, did any of you guys watch the video? I said in the video that I'm putting these into 3 categories, and I want you to know the categories. Can anybody tell me what are the 3 categories?
It's like by qualitative, quantitative, and by rank.
Okay, good. So, make that nicer. Okay, so one way I'm going to rank things is by number, and that is quantitative. Another method could be by qualitative, and that's about opinions. And another method is by rank. So all of these are going to be put into one of these 3 categories. So let's make sure we understand the categories first. Number. You guys are students, you get a grade in this class, that's a number, that's quantitative. And it's the same for employees. If employees get a score of any kind, that's quantitative. Qualitative is about opinions. So if I am giving you guys, if I'm writing an essay for each of you about your performance, that of course would not be a number. It's anything that's not a number is qualitative. Rank is ranking people from 1 to, the best to the worst. So now we'll go through these things. Number 1, essay evaluation. So we can go through these, and I have them all written down on the slides, but essay evaluation is the first one. Now, obviously, this is qualitative, right? So we have 1 over here for qualitative. This is about essays. So what does this mean? This means the manager writes a few paragraphs about each of the employees' strengths and areas requiring improvement. Now, for each of these 12 methods, I'd like you to know 2 things. Well, I guess 3. 1, I want you to know which category is it. Is it quantitative? Is it qualitative? Or is it rank? That's the first thing. The second thing is what's the benefit? And the third thing is what's the drawback or the disadvantage? So quantitative, qualitative, or rank, and what's the good and the bad of this? So about this, writing an essay, tell me something that is good about this idea, Christine. What would be a good benefit of having a boss write essays about all the employees?
They get like a clear, I don't know, just written in paper, clear like assessment of someone.
Sure, as long as the manager can write clearly. If the manager is not a good writer, this can be pretty bad. But so that's a good thing about it. Christine, can you tell me something bad about this?
Well, if they can't write clearly, then yeah, it's not good. Then I don't know, you just don't really see I don't know, you just don't see the big picture of it. Like it's just written down, but maybe, I don't know. I
If
don't know.
you, Christine, were a manager of 10 people, or let's say 20 people, would you want to use this method?
Oh no, if you have
Why
to
not?
write so many essays for
Right, so
yeah.
that's it. That's the other disadvantage, is it just takes so long. As opposed to giving people scores. It takes so long. I mean, I can give you guys a score in this class, and I give you tests that I need to read, but I could give you tests that are all true, false, and multiple choice. And then you just circle things and it's done. You know, that's super easy. So this is qualitative, right? It's qualitative. It's about opinions. It is good because you get a lot of information, but it's bad because it takes a really long time and you have to be able to write well. Next, weighted checklist. Weighted checklist is a list of descriptive statements, and they describe behavior in a job. And the items are rated from poor to outstanding, and each one has a number. And the managers get this checklist, but they don't know the weights. So let me explain this. It's a list of statements about what is good and what is bad. So let's say that you are, Chloe, what's a job you'd like?
Vet.
Ooh, that's a good one. Okay. Let's say one of my best friends from college ended up, he didn't become a vet. He ended up working in a zoo for 15 years as like an animal trainer. And there are all these pictures of him with baby tigers and all these like baby bears and stuff. It's amazing. So let's say that I am the manager of this veterinary facility and I'm rating Chloe. Now I would have lists of questions like, this employee comes on time. This employee has proper behavior. This employee is kind to the animals. This employee leaves the office very dirty. That would be bad behavior. This employee always puts away the medicines and locks the cabinet. That would be good. So I'm just going to have lists of all of these different behaviors. And each one, like this employee comes on time, will have numbers. So let's say it says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1 is bad and 5 is good. And Chloe always comes on time, so I give her a number 5. And then the next one, this employee dresses appropriately, and Chloe's good, so I give her a number 5. And then this employee keeps the office clean. Well, actually, Chloe doesn't keep the office very clean, so I give her a 2. And, you know, so I go through all these questions and I'm just circling numbers. So obviously, one benefit of this is that it's pretty fast. And there's another benefit. These questions are weighted. Chloe, do you know what that means, that they're weighted?
Each of them have like a different kind of importance.
Correct. So each of these questions has a different importance. Now, maybe this question, employee comes on time, that's not very important. 1 to 10, that's a 2. And employee dresses well, 1 to 10, that's a 2. Employee keeps the office clean. I said Chloe didn't do that. 1 to 10, that's a 9. Now, I, as the manager, I do not know the weight. HR created this test. HR knows the weight, but I don't. And so I give Chloe these scores, 5, 5, 4, 2, 3, 5, 1, 5, 0, whatever. I'm giving Chloe these scores, but I don't know which ones are really important to HR. Chloe, why? Why would this be good that the managers don't know what the importance of each question is?
Because that way he he can give an objective opinion about each employee, and even though they are doing good, he has like good relationship with someone. Those questions are based on the work for the entire like firm, and not only about the manager.
Sure. Well, I agree. It's much more objective. And like you said, even if we're good friends, and I can't give you a 5 on everything. So I might as well be honest, because I don't even know what's important and what's not. And so this is very good. Now, here's another thing you need to know about all of these together. When we're done with these today, we're going to do an exercise where I give you different jobs and I tell you, or I ask you, which of these appraisal methods would be good for different jobs. Now, this is an example of something that might be good for a new manager who doesn't really know all of the employees that well. So I don't really know what's important because I'm new. You know, it's not, I don't know what's important. If we brought in a new manager at CIP, how do they know which is most important? The teacher comes on time, the teacher speaks clearly, the teacher has good PPTs. How do they know? It would be much better to let someone who really knows, like HR, make this and then just give it to the new manager and say, just fill this out. Just be honest, because HR knows what's important. Now, that's what's good about this. So is this, Chloe, is this quantitative, qualitative, or rating? Oh, sorry, ranking.
Rating.
So does this tell me who is number 1 and who is number 2 and who is number 3 and who is number 4?
Not really.
No, it doesn't, because maybe everybody
It's
would get
qualitative?
the same marks. It is qualitative, correct. So this is based in numbers because everybody gets these circled numbers, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 3, 5, 3. Everybody gets the numbers. Now, what happens with those numbers? Each one is multiplied by the weight. So question 1 had a weight of 2. Question 2 had a weight of 2. Question 3 had a weight of 9. Question 4 had a weight of 5. Whatever the weight is, we're going to multiply the numbers. But in the end, you still end up with a final number. So this is quantitative. It's about numbers. It is good because it can be done very quickly. And the manager can't really use bias. What's bad about this? Is there anything that is a disadvantage?
It takes too much time.
Sure. Well, it definitely takes a lot of time for HR to make this because, and I could ask you this on the final exam, why does this take so much time? In order to make this, HR is going to have to interview the employees who have a lot of experience. If HR wanted to make this at our school at CIP, they would need to first interview Anselm or Simon or whoever to figure out what are the weightings, what's important. Does that make sense? It's like a little confusing, but I want to make sure you understand this idea of weighting. Jody, does this make sense to you?
Yes.
Good. Explain it to me, please.
Oh, which one? The 1, 2, 3, 4.
The concept. What is a weighted checklist?
Like you can weight someone by the numbers, but it just like what Sandra says, it takes time too long.
When you say you can rate them by the numbers, I mean, that's not a clear explanation. I'll need a better explanation than that, you know, on the final exam. This is a list of what? Jody, it's a list of what? Don't say descriptive statements. Tell me what that means.
The list of the employees' performance.
It's not, well, I mean, it's not a list of the employees' performance. What is it a list of? Nicola, what is this a list of?
Behaviors and maybe tasks. So
Sure.
you have,
It's a list of behaviors. I think that's good. And then what do we do with this list?
so the manager fill the question, the list, and it's rated, but the management don't know which question is more high and low.
Okay. And then the manager will circle numbers.
Mm.
What are these
Yes.
numbers that the manager has to circle?
It's like, for example, questions like, is the employee leaving the office clean? So there is a numbers to grade it.
Okay, so
I don't
that's
know,
the
from
number.
0 to 5, yes, and then he put 5. But he don't know how much important is this question, how much
Okay, good.
important
So-
this behavior.
So the number is a grade on the behavior. Okay, so you get graded on all these behaviors. But of course, the manager doesn't know which ones are important and which are not. Maybe some of them are not important, but the manager doesn't know. But the manager just grades you. Okay. And this is quantitative. Next, forced choice. Now, we did a forced choice example a few weeks ago where I gave you sentences and gave you an A and a B, and both of them were bad choices, if you remember. They were like the football coach, lets his students pass even though they didn't get good grades. And then a basketball coach tells the girls about something she shouldn't because it's, private information or whatever. They're both bad choices, but you had to choose which one was worse. And that idea is called forced choice. So let's take an example with, let me choose a new job. Anais, tell me a job you'd like to have.
I'd like to be an actress.
Okay, so let's say you want to be an act. That's a hard one. A really hard one. But okay, I'm going to make you a talent manager since you can't rate actresses the same way you do a business.
Okay.
But I'm going to make you a talent manager talent manager. And what I would do is, let's say that I am the manager of the office and I need to evaluate your performance. So I have a piece of paper that has 4 sentences. And it's like sentence number 1, the employee is sometimes angry and in a bad mood, but usually gets all of the clients to agree to whatever we need and sometimes treats the staff poorly. Number 2, the employee is always positive and dresses well and comes on time and gets about half of the clients to agree to what we need and never gets angry. Sentence number 3, employee is incredibly hardworking, comes early, stays late, and often gets new clients. So it's these kind of sentences. Now, as a manager, each of these sentences has something good and something bad. Or let's say the last one, the employee comes early, stays late, always gets new clients, but is extremely messy and doesn't dress well. So each of those sentences has something good and something bad. And as a manager, I need to choose one that best describes Anais. Now, how do I know which one? Let's say Anais is my good friend and I want to choose the best one for you. Anais, do I know which is the best?
I mean, they all have downsides.
And do I know which one HR thinks is the best?
It would have to be the one that's more aligned with what the company wants. Like if the company is more interested in your image, and the employee's image, where instead of for customers, then yeah.
And HR will determine that. So as a manager, HR is going to determine the effective behavior. And as a manager, I don't know. HR didn't tell me. I could guess, but I don't know which one they're really using. So I have less bias in a forced choice because I just have to pick the sentence that best describes you, even though I don't really know which one would be best. So again, this is to reduce bias. That's one of the benefits. Anais, is this quantitative, qualitative, or ranking?
Sorry, I was away from my computer. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Is it quantitative, qualitative, or ranking?
I think it's qualitative.
Okay, why?
Well, because you don't get any like numbers, so it's not quantitative, but then you're not comparing them to anything else. You're kind of just assessing how they're doing.
I would agree. So, okay, this is qualitative. It's about my opinion as a manager, which sentence best matches Anais. It's just my opinion. The good thing about this, it reduces bias. The bad thing about this doesn't really tell me how the employee is really doing. It just kind of gives HR a little bit of information about this one behavior. Let's say, for example, what HR really wanted to know here is about, do the clients do what we need them to do? That's the main thing HR was testing. So I didn't realize that. I thought that they would say getting new clients is the best. And so I circled that. Actually, Anais is going to get a bad rating because that's not what they care about. What they care about is who makes our clients the most receptive to our suggestions. And that's, so the bad thing is this might take a long time for HR to make a bunch of different forced choices for each different behavior, but it can be good because it reduces bias. Graphic rating scale is next, and this is the one that is the most common. But I would say let's, we're at 8:16 by my count, so we're an hour and 15 minutes in. Let's take 10-minute break and then get back to them. We're about halfway through. Great, we're now recording. Let's continue talking about the ratings and quantitative and qualitative and all that great stuff. So we talked already about the first three methods: essay, weighted checklist, and forced choice. Now we get to the one that's actually the most common one, and that's the graphic scale method. It would look, since now I can go backwards and forwards, which I couldn't when I was doing the video, it looks like this. This is what would be a common example of it. So you're going to have a bunch of different things that you're looking at. So communication, organizational know-how, personal effectiveness, teamwork, achieving business results. I mean, whatever you're rating people on. You know, you're going to have this whole list of traits, of behaviors, of, you know, communication, creativity, customer satisfaction, effectiveness, being on time, whatever you're rating. And all of them have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So in this sense, it's very easy. It's very clear. You just circle the number. So the big benefit of this is it's so fast. You could rate 100 people in, you know, an afternoon. You just look at the name and you just circle the numbers, you add them up, done. So that's the biggest benefit. And that's, you know, really why this is what most people use. The numbers usually go from 1 to 5. 1 and 2 is below expectation. Maybe 2, 3, 4, somewhere around here is expectation, meets expectation. And 4, 5 is someone who's very good. So in this sense, it's 5 numbers, but it really is from bad to good. So is this Nicola, is this quantitative, qualitative, or ranking?
I would say quantitative. Quantitative.
Right. So this is quantitative. It's about numbers. I could rate everybody, and at the end, they all get a number. It's not about my opinion. And yeah, I mean, everything's about your opinion, but it's not like an essay, it's numbers. So it lists work factors, and it could be how much work you did, your attendance, your job knowledge, whatever. For each factor, there's a series of boxes or numbers, and point values are assigned to each word. So the example for communication, below expectation, even with guidance, the employee fails to perform straightforward communications, including forms, paperwork, and records in a timely and accurate manner. And that's below. That's even with guidance, they fail. Meets expectations. With guidance, they can do it. And a role model, they can do it independently. Now, Nicola, what's the problem with this? I mean, this is great, right? We can do 100 employees in an hour.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out this. Maybe is it so clear and fast that the manager do not pay the properly attention to mark? I don't know.
Could be. That could be true.
Because this is so easy. It's very like blah 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 done blah 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 blah
Right.
done. You know.
That's true. It's very like yeah, it's almost like a machine. Christine, can you tell me any other problems? It's
I
great,
don't know.
right? You just do it super fast. Jody, any other problems with this?
No. Same with
Nope.
Nicola.
What's the benefit of essays? Jody, what's the benefit of essays?
The people, the employees can express themselves.
The employee is not writing the essay, the manager.
Or
The manager is writing, right? This is an appraisal. The manager is judging the employee.
so like there will be a feedback for the employees.
Yeah, but you get a feedback from this too. You get a number. You can look at the piece of paper and say, oh, for communication, I got a 4. For organizational know-how, I got a 2. Okay, I got to get better at that. You got feedback, right?
You know, like better feedback. I mean, like clear statement.
Okay, so that is true. With an essay, as an employee, you get a lot more information about how you're really doing. This is it's kind of sterile. It's not very full of information, and that's a problem. But there's another problem with it. And the other problem with it is that, let's say that I'm a manager and Jonathan is a manager. We're both managers. And for me personally, I think communication is the most important thing. Now, Jody, we're both rating you and you're a salesperson. For me, communication is definitely the most important. For Jonathan, he doesn't really care about communication. He really cares about sales. He really cares about the numbers. So we have communication, and I think it's so important. And I give Jody a 2, because I think he really needs to improve in this. But Jonathan doesn't care about communication. He gives Jody a 5. Because as far as he's concerned, as long as you can talk and you're fine, you get a 4 or 5. Who cares? And for me, I grade really hard on communication. Now we have a big problem here because my 2 is Jonathan's 4. We don't have any sort of standard of what 2 means. What does this mean? Like, with guidance, even with guidance, independently, this is just not very much information to really know what's a 2 and what's a 3 and what's a 4. And you see this in universities all the time, that you have some teachers who grade hard and some teachers who grade easy. That's a very common complaint among students, that some teachers grade easy and others grade hard, because there's no sense of exactly what does 85 mean for everybody. And that, we'd call that a lack of a global rating. There's no global rating. There's no sense of what a 3 means for everybody globally in this organization. And that's a real problem with this, because if you have a supervisor like Jonathan, everybody's going to get a really high score. And if you have a supervisor like me, everybody might get a low score. And then Jonathan's employees, everybody wants to work in Jonathan's department. Nobody wants to work in my department. But I'm a good manager. I just grade harder. That's a real problem with graphic rating scale, but it's still the most common method because it's so efficient, it's so fast. Next, alternation ranking. Well, this should be clear what kind it is. It's ranking. It's the first one we've seen that's ranking. And this is super easy. You choose one trait like communication, and you decide who's the best. Now, this is good sometimes. Can you think, Constance, can you think of any reason why I would need to know in this class who is number 1? Why there cannot be 2 students with the same top grade? There has to be a number 1 and there has to be a number 2. There cannot be 2 number 1s. Why could that be possible?
Only based on grades.
Yeah, but I'm saying, why would I need to only have 1 student be the best in the class?
Otherwise, the ranking is not like proper.
Why? I mean, Constance, let's say you're a great student. So is Jonathan, so is Harry, so is Chloe. Couldn't you all get a 99 in my class?
No.
Why? You've never gotten the same grade as somebody else?
Yeah, but it's not like linear.
But you could. Why would I need somebody to be 100 and then 99, 98, 97? Why? Camila, can you tell me why?
People that are below 2.
I'm not quite sure about like why, the reason why there should be like a number 1, or because then if they all have the same grade, for example, there can't be a ranking if they all have the same grade.
Do we need a ranking? Who cares?
For motivation?
Is it to compare everyone to the number 1?
Why would we need to do that?
To evaluate the performance. There will be a standard.
But we already have a standard. 60 is failing. I have lots of classes where students all get the same grade, where 5 students get a 93 or 6 students get an 89. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, but grades are not a ranking method in a strict sense.
No, they're not.
Yeah.
Everybody in the school could get the same grade. I mean, it doesn't matter. There's no reason. And what I'm asking is, can you think of a reason why maybe we would need to make someone number 1?
If we really want to know who's unequivocally the best and
it's
who
impossible
would be
to say.
second.
There's no unequivocals. Even if I gave you, wait for a second, even if I gave you a test that had no opinions, what if I gave you a test that was nothing but true, false questions? If it's right, it's right. If it's wrong, it's wrong. There's no opinions. It's true, false. Is it possible that 2 students would get exactly the same grade?
Yes.
Of course. There's no opinions. And let's say my midterm and my final, everything is all true, false. It would be possible that all the students would get the same, or some of the students would get the same grades. So there's no way to say exactly, there's no reason that we should have somebody who's number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. But sometimes in a business, we need to. And I'm asking why? Why can't we just say, these people are all very good? Why do we need to say Susan is the best? What's the difference between number 3 and number 4? Why do we need to do this?
Well, maybe
Is it not like a benchmark?
What if they all meet the benchmark? What if they're all better than the benchmark?
What if we only have to pick one for?
And okay, why? Why could we maybe only have to pick one, Bella?
so like the rest can see the number one. So like for example, when I was in like McDonald's, I can see like the best employee of the month, something like that.
No, what I mean is, for example, we can only give, I don't know, we should only keep one and fire the rest, or we can only give like benefits to one person, or promote one person.
So yeah, this is what I'm talking about. Let's say that we have a scholarship at CIP, one scholarship for free tuition. Now, what if I give my true false tests and everybody, 5 people all get a 99? What are we supposed to do? We need one best. Is there a big difference? I mean, this is 6 people. CIP might have 300 people. Can you do this easily with 300 people? Bella, what's the problem with doing this alternation ranking method if you have like more than 100 people?
I think for the ranking, it's also a little bit time consuming to set the standards on what you are ranking based
Definitely. But there's another problem. Is there a big difference between person number 56 and person number 55?
Definitely not.
Definitely not, right? Or person number 17 and 18, or 99 and 100. There's just, when you have a lot of people, the distinction between one number and the next number is so small. So this doesn't really work with a lot of people. You really can't do it with more than like, I don't know, 20. Anything more than that, and you start to get into these, how do you say who's 17 and who's 18 out of 50? You can't. There's no way to know that. Out of 6, okay. And this can be really useful when you only have benefits for a few people. They're going to go to England to work on this project, and they're going to go to a convention in Hawaii. You only have a benefits for a few people, or on the other hand, you must fire 1 or 2 people. Let's say the economy is bad, you have to fire 2 people. How do you decide who to fire? You need a ranking for this. Now, in alternation ranking, we usually do it based on a trait. So this is not who's the best person, this is who's the best communicator. You might have another list for who's the most creative. You might have another list for who's the most friendly or who is the most efficient. You could have a lot of these different lists. And then the problem is maybe Susan is the best communicator, but maybe on a bunch of other lists, she's at the bottom. So because this is not really effective, there's another ranking method called paired comparison. So this is also ranking, the paired comparison method. And this is the same idea that you're ranking people, but instead of ranking everybody, now you're comparing each person to each other person. So let's say I want to know who's the best at communication in this class. I would start with Jonathan, and I'm going to compare Jonathan to Jody. Who's better at communication? Let's say I think Jonathan's better. Who's better, Jonathan or Constance? I say Constance. So if Jonathan's better, he gets a plus. So Jonathan v. Jody, Jonathan gets a plus. Jonathan v. Constance, Jonathan gets a minus. Jonathan v. Bella. Jonathan gets whatever. Jonathan v. Anais, Jonathan v. Nicola, Jonathan v. Christine. And we go down and we do this example for every single person. We compare one person, person A, of course, we can't compare them to themselves, but we compare person A to B, to C, to D, to E. And then for person B, we compare them to everybody. Of course, compare person B to person B, there's nothing there, but we compare each person to each other person just for one trait, like quality. Now, why? So we do this, we compare them. If Art, for example, is better than Maria, then Art gets a plus. If Art is better than Chuck, Art gets a plus. If Art is worse than Diane, Art gets a minus. If Art is worse than Jose, Art gets a minus. And then we compare Maria to all these people. Now, this is Art's column. This is Maria's, Chuck's, Diane's, and Jose's. And we look who has the most pluses. Maria does. Maria ranks highest for quality. However, for creativity, Maria does not rank the highest. Like I said, different people have different traits. For creativity, Art ranks the highest. And we would need to know that. Depends what we're looking for. What's good about this? Can you tell me something good about this? How about Ethan? Ethan, you there?
I'm here. I think it'd be good to find kind of like a balance, and then you kind of have a kind of a full understanding of, like, a standard, and then where employees kind of rank higher or lower than that, and then where maybe an employee needs extra training or assistance, and then who you can kind of see grasps your quality
Ethan,
of work.
How is this better than alternation ranking? Or is it better?
I think it's maybe not better, but I think it's easier to see what employees maybe are not, I guess, better than others, because with the numbers, as you said, if there could be a gap of 10 employees and they could be nearly identical, and here you can be like, okay, this person needs more work, this person doesn't. It's a little more, I think, detailed than just having a ranked list.
Sure. Good. Okay. How about Chandra? Chandra, let's say that there are 300 people at CIP.
Yeah.
Would it be reasonable to make a list of all 300 for who is the best communicator?
You mean with the alternation ranking method?
Yes.
Not really, but
Not
maybe
really.
with a paired comparison method, since it's a good way to make full use of the method of each option, maybe it's better. The result can be calculated in a better way.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because while I might have a few people who score the same, they all get, out of 300, they all get 255 pluses. That's possible.
Mhm.
And I would have a few people who all get that score. But still, I could not just say out of 300 people who's number 300 or who's number 1, who's number 2, who's number 3. Because even if I think that way, how can I separate number 187 from 188? There's just no way. At that level, it's all the same thing. You might as well just say like bad, medium, good, because it's impossible to separate 187 from 188 out of 300. However, you can always compare two people. And that's all this does. It only compares two people again and again and again. Compares one person to every other person in the organization and gives a plus or minus. So the benefit is you actually can rank a large group with this. What's the problem? Mikhail, what's the problem with this?
The problem is that everybody can be like this can be a really high performance team.
Could be.
So it doesn't really give a clear picture of who is like the lowest person in this comparison could still be very high performing.
Well, but I'd still find out who's better. Is this going to be a reasonable? Remember, we said earlier today, that this has to be practicable and workable. Is this practicable to do this method with 300 people?
No.
To compare every student to 300 other people and have a list of 300 pluses and minuses for every student. This would take months or at least weeks. It would be a full-time job for weeks to make this. So it just takes too long. So what do we do if we have 300 people? We use a forced distribution method. This is still considered rank. So now this is our third ranking method. Okay, our first one was just choosing a trait like communication, creativity, efficiency, and then deciding numbers, top to worst, top to bottom. Next was for larger groups, because this is more detailed. It's more clear who is better than who. This is for the largest groups. And what we have is, let's say we have 300 people. We're going to have a split. Let's say it's 20-70-10 split. 20% of people are in the top, 70% are in the middle, and 10% are in the bottom. So we don't need to say what's the difference between 177 and 178. Doesn't matter. We have top, middle, bottom. This was pioneered by a company called Sun Microsystems. And what they would do is they would take the bottom 10% and they'd say, listen, you can take an exit package. That means we'll give you money, just leave. Or a 90-day performance improvement plan. If after 90 days you're still in the bottom 10%, then you can resign and we'll give you severance, which is payment but less. If you don't want to, you can try again in 90 days. And if you're still in the bottom 10, you're fired, no payment. Rodrigo, do you think this is a good method?
I mean, it's really fast, but it doesn't give you like a real overview as an essay would do.
Sure, but if you have 300 people and you're the manager, would you want to write 300 essays?
Definitely not, but yes, I think it's a good one for a lot of people.
What's the problem with this? I agree, it's good for a lot of people. Can you tell me a problem with this?
I'm wondering if it's legal,
What do you mean?
I
Why
mean,
would it be
for example,
illegal?
can I fire someone and give no money,
Oh, sure, if they agree to that. I mean, in this situation, these people have agreed that you gave them a chance, they had a choice. Take the money or try again for 90 days. Then they had another choice. Take less money or try again for 90 days. You're definitely giving them the option.
I see.
Yeah, it's not that it's illegal.
That's
not the problem. The problem is similar to, and I think it was Mikhail who said this, in this one, what if you have a group of very high performing people? What if you have a group of very high performing people in this example? You still must. If it's 300 people, you're going to have to put 30 people in the bottom. Now, what if these 30 people are all geniuses? What if you're doing this at Harvard? Could you? Sure. Is there a group of people who are the bottom of Harvard or Princeton or Yale or Tsinghua or Beida or whatever, Oxford? Are there people in the bottom? Of course there are. Is the bottom of Oxford still good? Probably. probably they're still very smart. And it would be terrible to get rid of 30 out of 300 who work at Google or Apple or Microsoft. These are all very, very good employees. You don't want to get rid of them, but you might have to. So it is not forgiving. High performing teams must cut 10%. But on the other hand, a slow performing team, they get to keep 90%. You know, what if Nicola is the manager of one group and I'm the manager of another, and everybody's doing this in the company? Nicola's employees are amazing. It's the best department. He's got to cut 10% of those people. My department is the worst in the company. I get to keep 90%. Yeah, okay, I cut 10%, but I mean, he's losing good people. I'm keeping bad people. So why would we possibly do this? Well, when you get to really large groups, evaluations still have to be practicable. They have to be workable. They cannot be too expensive or too time consuming. Now, another reason that we want to do this is, and we'll talk more about this after we finish these, still in this topic, is something called the middle bias. And the middle bias is a tendency for managers to score all the employees in the middle. Usually it's slightly above average. And you see this all the time. If you ask a teacher, how are the students in your class? Oh yeah, they're all pretty good. How's Nicola? Oh, he's pretty good. How's Jody? Oh, he's pretty good. How's Mikhail? Oh, he's pretty good. Right now, as a manager, I don't want you guys to get fired. So I'm going to give everybody, out of 10, I'll give everybody 6 or 7. It's just a bias. Managers do this all the time. But you have to, in a company, you have to get rid of some people. And only some people can be promoted or given more responsibility or given training or put into an acceleration pool, if you remember what that is. Anybody remember what's an acceleration pool?
The employees who have some excellent skills, they get together and get training, the certain training.
Sure. They get together and get certain training. They become this group that we will take for high level senior positions when they open. Could be 2 years, could be 3 years, but we'll keep them in this group that gets more special training. So we want the top and the bottom people to stand out. We don't want everybody to be satisfactory. Next is the critical incident method. This is another way of appraising our employees. And this is an anecdotal record. It could be kept by the employee or the manager. I think it's more useful when the employee keeps it. But it's an anecdotal record of work-related behavior. Another word for an anecdotal record is a diary or a journal. That's what that means. An anecdote is evidence that is based on your experience. So if I keep a critical incident method, then after every class or every day before I go home, I would turn on my computer and I would take 5-10 minutes and I would write down what happened today. Today I taught an HRM class and this student was good and answered many questions, and this student didn't know, and this student was, very quiet and, whatever. I'd write down what happened. Anything that was good, anything that was not good. The boss could do this too, but I think it's more useful when the employee does this. Tell me, Anais, is this quantitative, qualitative, or ranking? You look like you're in a very purple room.
Yeah, I got my LEDs a couple days ago.
It's great.
I think it's qualitative since it's anecdotes, so it's kind of like, again, assessing and talking.
Agree. It's qualitative, right? It's not about numbers. There's no numbers here at all. And it's not about ranking. It doesn't say who's number one, who's number two, who's number three. There's no ranking, there's no numbers. This is very much like an essay, right? It's like essays, except it's not an essay, it's a diary. What's the benefit of keeping this kind of journal? Anais, what's the benefit of keeping this kind of journal?
It's pretty much the same reason why you want to do everything else. You kind of want to have an idea of how people are behaving at work, and like what kind of things happen to them, or like how they deal with situations.
Okay, sure. So just like the essay, you get a large amount of information, lots of high density information. And that's great. What's the problem with it, Anais?
Not sure. I mean, I think it sounds pretty interesting, just because you're not really talking about, you're not only talking about performance, you're talking about work related behavior.
So let's say that we use this at CIP, and all of the teachers write down these journals every day. And now, after 6 months, it is time for our evaluation with Elaine. Is this going to be easy for her to read?
Hello?
I think you're frozen. Lost to the purple void. Christine.
Yeah,
What's the disadvantage?
it takes too much time. She cannot read all diary.
I mean, if every teacher writes every day, and that's CIP, we only have a small number of teachers. Imagine how much writing it would be if every person writes every day. Eling is going to have to essentially read a book. It'd be like reading 6 months, 30 days per month, 30 days times 6, 180 entries for each teacher. It's going to take her forever. That's a real problem with this. So it depends on the number of people. You don't have to make people write every day. They could only write when something interesting happens. That's possible too. There's another benefit of this, and it's a very important benefit, which is the short-term bias. What's the short-term bias, Mikhail?
It's when managers only remember things that happened recently.
Yeah, and that's very common, right? If Eling needs to give me an evaluation, does she remember what happened 8 months ago when I helped some student with a project? Probably not. She probably remembers what happened last week. And she's going to evaluate me, but the problem is, this is about my salary. This is about promotions, training, compensation, benefits. It's all kinds of things. And what if I was really, really good early in the year? And I thought she was going to remember that. But of course, what happens later? I mean, this is the same idea that you can be a great person all day, and then in the last 5 minutes, start a big fight with somebody. All that people are going to remember is the fight. That's the short-term bias. We all have it. But it's important as managers to be aware of it. And the benefit of a critical incident method is when Eling is reading back for many months, she can see what happened 8 months ago or 7 months ago. That's a huge benefit. So even though this method takes time, there are some really big benefits. This is the only method that can eliminate the short-term bias. And that short-term bias is a real problem. Now, we said before that there was a problem with the graphic rating scale method. Well, there's a couple problems. For one, while the critical incident or essay is very information rich or dense, the graphic rating scale method tells us very little information. 4, 4, 5, 4, 3, 4, 2, 2, 4. And There's almost no information. But I said there was another problem. And that's, what if for communication, I expect very high standards. So I usually give people a 2. And Jonathan is the other manager, and he has different expectations. And he usually gives people a 4. My 2 equals Jonathan's 4. That's a problem. And it happens all the time. How do we fix that? And that's why the bars method was created. So this is an appraisal method that combines the graphic rating scale, this qualitative number idea, with the critical incident idea of anecdotes. So I just said an anecdote, right? An anecdote is an experience. So if I say, let's say you tell me that Chinese people like to drink warm water, but not cold water. And I say, how do you know that? And you say, well, I lived in China and I went to many friends' homes and they always offered me warm water. Nobody ever offered me cold water. Christine, does that prove that Chinese people like to drink warm water?
Yeah.
All 1 billion of them?
Not all, but
what does it prove?
Just proves this family likes to drink warm water, hot water.
Correct. It just proves that the people you knew liked that. Right? It might not prove the entire group. How would we prove that Chinese people are like that? Anyway, anybody? Or Christine, how would we prove that? How would we try to prove that?
You have to test a lot of families.
You give a survey. Could we do it? Sure, we could. Let's say we test, 1 million or 20 million people on WeChat. Okay, now that's evidence. That's quantitative evidence. Anecdote is like, I know a family and they give me warm water, therefore I think. That's an anecdote. It's just an experience that you had. And in this rating scale, we're going to use those anecdotes along with quantitative. And we're going to do that for one purpose, to anchor. And what that means, right? An anchor is on a boat to make sure the boat doesn't move in the water. You drop the heavy anchor, right? Anchor means to stop something from moving. To anchor as a verb means to stop something from moving. What are we stopping from moving? The difference between a 2 and a 4. So I give people a 2 and Jonathan gives people a 4. We need an anchor. We need to know what 2 means. 2 has to be stopped. 2 can't move around. It's got to be clear what 2 means. It's got to be clear what 4 means for everybody. How do we do this? Well, we're going to use anecdotes. So an anecdote is like a story, right? Christine said, I had a friend who was Chinese and I went to his house and they gave me hot water. Well, that's a story. So we're going to use stories to figure out what these numbers mean. So for example, what would be, and here's for sales skill, what would be a bad salesperson? Now we looked back before, remember at the graphic scale model, and we said, what is bad? Bad is even with guidance, fails to prepare. Now, could we use this for sales? Is this very clear, Chloe? Is this very clear? Even with guidance, fails to prepare straightforward communications. Do you know what that means? Will everybody in the whole company know exactly what this means?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, what is timely? What is accurate? What is straightforward? It's like, we definitely could have different opinions about what these mean. Now, what if instead of that, we have this? The customer said he didn't like the looks of our product. The salesperson said, well, that's our style, and that the customer would probably be happier with the competitor's model. Does that give you a better idea of what this not good sort of feels like? Rather than using words like not straightforward or timely or accurate. Does this give you a better feeling? What kind of person would you describe this salesperson as in this 1-2? Give me some adjectives. Chloe?
Someone that is not like someone a bit pretentious.
Sure. I mean, you have to imagine this story. Imagine that really you're watching someone and a customer comes over and says, you know what, I don't love the look of this car. And the salesperson says, well, that's our style. You'd probably be happier with somebody else's, go buy somebody else's car. Bella, how would you describe this kind of salesperson?
Like consistent?
Maybe lazy.
Maybe. Jody, what'd you say?
Like not creative.
Not creative, sure.
Not putting
Like
in
rude.
effort.
Yeah, I think it's even rude. Well, that's our style. If I was the customer, I'd be like, oh, sorry. Sorry, I bothered you that I wanted to buy your car. Excuse me. I mean, the point is, we all get the same feeling. Whether you describe it as lazy or not creative or rude or whatever, we're all getting a very similar feeling about this person. What about like a 9-10? Here's the story, and imagine you're watching this. A customer said she might buy from us or from our competitor. When the finance department rejected her application, the salesperson compared our lower priced model to our competition and convinced her to buy our model. Christine, with some adjectives, could you describe this salesperson?
Hardworking, dedicated. She's strategic, maybe.
Sure, those are all very good words. Jonathan, would you add any words to this?
I think that fits the bill really good. No, probably not.
Okay. I mean, strategic is a good word. Nicola, any words you'd add to this?
Kind of diligent, but
yeah,
smart.
That's what I was thinking. Sort of doesn't give up.
Yeah.
Doesn't give up easily. And also like strategic is good. I might also say friendly, maybe. You know, but the point is we all get a similar feeling. When you look back at something like this from the graphic rating scale method, there's no feeling here. There's no feeling at all. It's so cold and not personal. And so even though we can do this so quickly, we lose so much of what does 2 mean? What does 5 mean? That we can get if we're just using these stories. So the bars usually looks like this. We would have one trait. Now, of course, here's a problem. Look back at that other one. One piece of paper, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We can have so many. That's not what numbers look like, David. Too OCD to let that stay there. Okay. So we could have 10 different traits on one piece of paper. And it's so fast. With the bar scale, however, one piece of paper, one trait. Like communication, that would be one piece of paper. Creativity, that'd be 1. Sales, being a good salesperson, that'd be 1 piece of paper. So this is going to take us a little longer. And it's definitely going to take us longer to create. HR department is going to have to make these stories. So like here, let's look at somebody who's what's this, a 1-2, really low. Can't read this easily. Oh, here, I can move that. Can I? Oh, okay. So 1-2, this is for selling cars. The customer said he didn't like the looks of our vehicle, and the salesperson told him the style is the style, and he'd probably be happier with a competitor's vehicle. I mean, we get a feeling there. This guy's kind of a jerk. He gives up immediately. He's not nice. He's rude. He's thoughtless. Doesn't treat customers well. Look at somebody who's like a 10. A prospect said she would only buy one of our luxury convertibles or would buy a competitor's. Oh, that's the same thing I put before. You know, look, what about middle? How do we know what a 5-6 is? The prospect said he was looking for a car that he could use to haul his boat. And for off-road purposes, the salesperson emphasized our vehicle's low price and quality. I mean, it's like, okay. It's sort of a feeling of like, good enough. He was okay, he wasn't bad, but he didn't convince, he wasn't an amazing communicator. There's so much information packed into these stories. Now, here's a problem at most universities. So I'll show you, for example, I'm a teacher at CIP. I'll show you the one we use. This is what we use at CIP. A, superior work. B, good work. C, satisfactory work. D, passing. I mean, there is no information here. What does good mean? What does superior mean? It's just, there's nothing here that explains it. And it's really important that we have some sort of explanation for this. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to take, I'm going to put you into groups and I'd like you to take a few minutes and I just want you to make, forget the 4 entries. I'd like you to make 1. Choose 1 to 2, 3 to 5, 6 to 8, or 9 to 10. And I'd like you to think of one of these sort of little 1 or 2 sentence stories that you think describes a bad teacher or a mediocre teacher or an excellent teacher or a quite good teacher. You know, just create one of these 1 or 2 sentence stories that you can kind of get a feeling about the teacher. You guys understand what I want from you? Yeah? Okay, so let me put you in some groups. Okay. So I made 4 rooms. Which one are you guys doing?
1 second. So can you repeat again? Write an anecdote about which one?
Whatever you want. Do you want, you can write about it, you know, sort of bad, mediocre, or great.
Okay.
Which one? Just pick one.
Bad.
Great. Okay, so write a 1 to 2 sentence. You don't have to write it, you know, but come up with a 1 to 2 sentence explanation, a little story of, you know, like student goes to see teacher and teacher does what.
Yes, okay. Rated as
Stuff like that. That's for bad.
Students, like teaching students. And
Which one are you guys doing? Bad, mediocre, or good?
Oh, we're just doing 1, right?
What's doing bad? What we're doing bad?
Can't hear anybody.
Oh, we were just discussing about like what.
Chloe, can you hear me?
Yeah.
What happened to my speaker?
Oh, we
We can
can
hear
hear.
you.
It's so weird. All of
Can you hear
I
us?
think he cannot hear us.
I can hear you, Chloe.
You can hear me,
Yeah,
but
and
I can hear the guys too.
I can hear
I can
everyone.
hear everyone.
Something just changed with my headphones, but I can still hear you.
Okay.
I had asked, which are you doing? Are you doing bad, good, or mediocre?
We were in bed.
Okay.
Okay, so we were just making the sentence like a bad teacher would.
Are you guys doing bad, good, or mediocre?
We did kind of all.
I think we did all four.
Did it all.
Oh, good. Well, then let me close the breakout rooms. It sounds like everybody's done. I want to hear them. You guys did that fast. Okay, let me hear some of these. Constance, can you tell me one?
For bad, anything that the teacher will do that is like, for example, if you come to him and you ask for further explanation or about an assignment, the lesson, anything that the teacher will say like, it's not my concern anymore, I did my part. If you don't understand, that's your problem.
Sure, that's a sort of a bad. Bella, can you give me one, a story?
Yeah, for like, is it 4 to 5? I think it's one level better than bad.
Sure.
When you ask when you ask the teacher a question on WeChat or you email him, he does answer, but like with delays, and he doesn't answer clearly. Like he only mentions, yeah, he doesn't clarify everything. Just
good. That gives me a good sense of the kind of person. Jody, can you tell me one?
For example, like 6 to 8, maybe the teacher responded clearly, but still needs clarification. I mean, like,
that to me feels like it's not enough of a story. I don't know, like with Bella's, she said you wrote a WeChat to someone, and I got a feeling of like the story. You just said, you ask for guidance or something, but I'm not, it's like, I'd want to know a little more.
yeah.
Like maybe for 6 to 8, maybe something like you go to see a teacher in the office and the teacher says, I'm sorry, I don't have time now, but schedules an appointment for the next day. And at that appointment gives you 20 minutes and answers your questions, but you don't fully understand. Maybe, like, I don't know, just something where I can see it or feel it. Anybody have like a funny story? Somebody want to tell me a funny story? Harry, you got a good one?
Like about a bad teacher?
Or, well, I guess bad is usually funnier than good. I don't mean a real story. Don't tell me a real story. I just mean one of these anecdotes.
It's not from college, so you don't know the teacher, so it's okay.
Okay.
Basically, like one time I was in class and the teacher like explaining something and I raised my hand and I asked him like, can you like tell me a little bit like about what you're talking about? Because it was like a physics class, so he just like put an equation, and then he was like, if you had to stop class every time you had a question, we'd never have class. I was like, wow, okay, thanks.
Mean.
How about this then? Teacher says, guys, ask me all the questions you need, and then every time he gets asked a question, he's annoyed. That happens a lot.
Oh, that's a
classic.
Yeah, I understand that. At the school I used to work at before CIP, they had an economics teacher where the students would say, teacher, can you answer this question? Like explain this chart. And the teacher would say, oh, it's not on the test. And the students would say, okay, but I just want to know what it means. And the teacher would say, well, but it's not on the test. They say, but oh, that's not, we don't care. We want to know what it means.
It's also happy CIP.
That's dangerous. Yeah, not great. Okay, so, we'll stop. Well, let me do one more so we just finish these because there's only one left. We're almost done with them. So bars, the idea of this bars thing is that and this is my favorite. I think this is the best one, so in the final exam, while I definitely will ask you about these 12. And next week, we're going to start the class by looking at an example that we can do together of a bunch of different jobs and why you might choose different ones. So we're going to review all of these next week because 100% I'll put this stuff on the final exam. And I really like bars. I think it's one of the best ways also because even though it takes time for HR to make this at the beginning, once they've made it, they have it. If you wanted to make one of these for teachers, yeah, it would take time at the beginning to make one about communication or creativity or knowing the subject or being a good speaker, whatever. But once you have these, then you can use them for years because they're just these general stories. The last one is called MBO, and that's where I said before, oh, there's two more. That's where I said before that MBO is just like goal setting, because it's about objectives, which are goals. And this is like goal setting. You have SMART goals. I said before, there were 3 things I wanted you to know about goals. Anybody remember? What were those 3 things I wanted you to know?
They align with the company's goals, or
Yep.
the employee's goals. Align, they're SMART, and I can't remember the last one. Oh, yeah, it says you should discuss or check up on your goals, manage them.
Not clear at all.
I don't know. That was a guess.
Reliable?
Participative.
What is it?
What is it? Constance, help us out. What does participative mean? Participate.
Like a community.
We're talking about setting goals.
Like everyone has his input.
This is the same problem we had before. This is not about everyone. Mikhail?
No, it's about the manager and the employee making it together.
That's
no,
right.
I found my notes.
Okay. So yes, I think that the employer, it's not I think, but the employee should participate with the manager to make the goals. And this was the example I said before of, would you want me to give you a grade in this class based on a goal? And sure, we could set the goal together. If I just said it, you might not like it. But if we set it together, you might find a goal that you are willing to do. So it should be aligned with the company's goals. It should be SMART, which means clear, and it should be participative. I do not care if you remember that word, but I do care if you remember the manager and employee should set the goal together. And then we said before, there is also self-evaluation. This is what I started with, where I asked Rodrigo what he would give himself as a grade. And this is allowing the employees to compare their assessments with that of the manager. The employees can comment in writing. So they would write, what are their strengths? What are their areas for improvement? If I asked you guys, what are your strengths? What are your areas that you need improvement? Where would you like more education? What are the things in the school that you find helpful or you dislike? What are projects that you would like to work on? What are your immediate versus long-time career plans? I mean, you can tell how valuable this would be. What's the benefit? Of course. Oh, by the way, let's just make sure, I'm sorry to jump back. The bars system, is this quantitative, qualitative, or ranking? Are there numbers?
Yes.
Quantitative, right? There are numbers. So it is quantitative. The good thing about this is you get lots of information, much more than the graphic rating scale. You get lots of information. The bad thing about this, it takes more time to make. It doesn't take a lot of time to do. You're still just circling numbers. It doesn't take very long, but it takes longer than the graphic rating scale. MBO is this quantitative, qualitative, or ranking. Are there numbers here?
No.
No. There are goals.
Qualitative.
Qualitative.
Yeah, it's qualitative. It's about, not number things. And there's no ranking here. People might have totally different goals. The goal of your goal for this quarter and somebody else's goal for this quarter. One is about sales, one is about customer satisfaction. You can't rank them. They're totally different, but they're about opinions. And the self-evaluation, quantitative, qualitative, or ranking. Are there numbers here?
Qualitative.
Yeah, qualitative. There's no numbers here. And there's no ranking here. There's no number 1, number 2, number 3. This is just, and the benefits of this are huge. I get all kinds of information about what you believe. What's the drawback? What's the disadvantage of this? Well, there's 2. For 1, it's going to take a long time. And for 2, maybe people will tell me that they are better than they really are. Might be a little bit dishonest. Okay, so I kept you guys, about 10 minutes late today, but we will stop there. And next week, so that's where the videos pretty much stop too. There's a tiny bit more. And then next week, we'll finish out this topic. Like I said, this is the biggest topic. We'll finish this and we'll start on the next topic, which is compensation. And I will do my absolute best to have the grades to you by next week. Any questions? No? Okay. Then Bella, wait. Bella is the host. Okay, Bella is now the host, and I will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, sir.